Welcome back, guys, to This Week in Tyranny. It's the first show of the new year. It's like 9 a.m., so I'm not more of a night owl, but we're gonna get through it anyway, hopefully. Hey, trying something new. The themes of this show are gonna be about the importance of the 3D world, like making sure that you're staying attached to the actual principles of daily life, not going too far in any direction, to not be detached from what's actually going on, from the bulk of what humanity is experiencing. It's also going to be about creativity and originality. Uh, Basically, let me just summarize it. I was going to do a whole show about big popular channels because I got some of these clips sent to me, and it got on my nerves the way these guys sound, these big channels. I'm not gonna call them out. I decided against it. I basically scrapped the show uh, because I don't want to be that guy. I didn't feel good doing it, so I just had to listen to myself there. I'm not gonna cut people down and criticize how they see the world, But my basic issue, to summarize, at least get the gist of what I was thinking, is it's a lot of old guys out of touch with reality. Is what I'm hearing. Uh, Not in the sense that they've gone against what they were saying before, but it seems like a lot of people are pushing a mysterious universe, an unknowable universe with an unknowable future, where it's sounding like everybody's warning against the apocalypse that's going to happen any day now. Any day, everything's going to collapse. Everything's getting out of control. The AI, um, no philosophy, no morality, and basically what it's missing the most, I think, is a short-term plan of short-term goals to actually take this reality back and make the world a better place. Um, I'm also a big picture thinker. I talk about the world in a big picture way, but after a while, it just ends up being very abstract. And it's like, what are you going to tell people who are like in their 20s and 30s about short-term goals to actually, they're in the game. They're not going to be gone in 15 years. They're not going to be senile. They're going to be raising their children. They're going to be at the helm of where the society is going. So why don't we get through to them in a way that's like the scientific method, that's repeatable, observable, you know, trustworthy, that stands up to scrutiny. It's not very hyper spiritual and up in the air somewhere. So, not to make too much of that. Um, but I decided against, playing back some clips of stuff I don't like and then spending my show to talk about what they should be talking about. That's really backwards. Uh, I don't want to fall into that trap. So instead, I'm going to highlight some hidden gems on the internet that nobody knows, that I've discovered and that I think are really important, that do talk about the sort of things that I wish I saw more of, right? So that's what's gonna happen. I got no notes for this show other than this piece of paper where I wrote a few things down. So just bear with me, and it's the first show of the new year, so we're gonna try something new. One thing that I will not, I'll mention it briefly, right? The overthrow of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, right? The United States, for those that don't know, or those that do know, they did a middle of the night military operation, and they removed the leader of Venezuela, and they kidnapped him, or took him to stand trial in the United States. Do I think Maduro is a good guy? I don't even know him very well, but I would say no. I would lean towards saying absolutely not. I don't think any South American leaders at this moment are doing a good job, that are not engaged in corruption. I don't think. Anyway, in Venezuela, the oil company is nationalized, right? So you've got socialism where the state is taking the the profits of the people, as if they're not doing it here, right? Um, so all I want to say about this is, and actually I'll show you, I won't just talk about it. I want to refer back to history, because people have a short view of history, a short memory of history. Like, everything that happens, we tend to respond to it like it's so unprecedented, like it's the new thing that happened and this has never happened before. Usually when a leader of country that used to be a colony. They used to that is a colonial, South American or Central American or African country. Usually, when or Middle Eastern leader gets removed, usually they get killed, or they get put on trial by people within that country. And here, it's actually the United States taking him away. I don't know if that's specifically happened before, but the idea of regime change is nothing new. So I wanted to just show you this. This is Wikipedia. United States involvement in regime change, and I just, I don't have an encyclopedia in my brain, so I think about, the regimes that I remember being overthrown by the United States. I remember Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi. There was the whole Iran-Contras scandal, But so that's why I have to actually refer to some kind of standardized source where all of these are listed. There's, pre-World War One, all of these, I don't really know them. I read through them a little bit. But I almost have to go past World War Two because obviously a war and regime change. I'm not gonna blame the United States for regime change in like Japan and like countries that they were at war with. That's understandable, right? Like the post-Soviet countries. But when you get into the 60s, and you could even say Guatemala right here, the Guatemalan Civil War. I'm just gonna gloss over it real quick. 1954, CIA operation codenamed Operation PB Success. The U.S. government executed a coup that successfully overthrew the government of President Jacobo Arbenz, elected in 1950. Then they installed Carlos Castillo Armas, the first of a line of right-wing dictators, in its place. Then there's Syria. Then there's Indonesia. Then there's Iraq in 1959. Of course, that won't be the end of it, right? There's the whole thing in Vietnam, Cuba, right? Cuba, Cambodia. There's a whole controversy about how much did the U.S. support the Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. That was one of the biggest genocides in world history. That there was U.S. involvement in there. And basically all I want to just show you is how much of this there is. There's, of course, Argentina, right? There was support there. Both the coup and the following authoritarian regime were endorsed and supported by the U.S. government, with Henry Kissinger paying several official visits to Argentina during the dictatorship. Now, the ones where there's just support, I won't really say it's that egregious. But this is egregious, right? Afghanistan, where the CIA is training. They're training Osama bin Laden, and they're training what would become the Al Qaeda forces to overthrow a regime. And whether it's right or wrong is not really the point. The point is the United States has an interventionist policy, and it's really crazy and unfortunate that the country that overthrew a colonial power, right? The American Revolution that begun kind of, was Enlightenment ideals coming into the physical 3D world, right? They very shortly turned into the police dog of the world, and they turned into, the police dog, the military arm of the colonial powers. Which is really crazy and sad, but it's the way it is, right? So, just want to, let's scroll all the way down at least, right? So you can see how much of this there is. Haiti, Zaire, right? The country no longer exists. It's the Democratic Republic of the Congo now. Somalia, 2003. There's a lot of that. So, history. Short memory of history. This is what we have. This is just the way it is, right? And we will lose a lot of channels to history, a lot of people who were doing their best to bring content forward. This is kind of like, even though this site, 153news.net, it got taken down in the last 2 months, I believe, in September. It's got the vibe of the mid-2000s. A lot of stuff from the mid and late 2000s. A time where I think the internet was in a much better place. And the world was in a much better place before the social media era. And now things are so centralized. There are a couple of big platforms. There's YouTube, there's BitChute, there's Odyssey, there's Rumble, and then most people are on X, and they're actually, on the social medias is where a lot of this goes. And then people with their own personal websites and platforms, those who can afford and they have the infrastructure and resources to be their own publishers, right? And when you bunch people into those platforms, it gets very centralized. It's like you think about the rural communities and all of the people living in the countryside, and slowly everything gets packed into these cities, densely packed. And when you live in a densely packed city, your voice doesn't mean as much. This is why you see you'll see videos of people doing crazy stuff on public transportation, or people getting stabbed in the street, and people just walk by like nothing happens, because population density, and it does devalue the human being. That is just the case. That's not to say you can't have a city where you have respect for for natural principles and respect for human life, but it's just the way it goes. So I'm going to play just a bit of 153 News' final message, another channel that has been lost to time. And 153 News was like an uncensored YouTube. You see, they even have the old school YouTube user interface. You see, and I found it on Archive, by the way, which is what you should do. This is archive.ph, and then you just type in the websites, and it shows you. They've been around since 2017, so it's not a very old website, but it was definitely old school, and it was simple. And very unfortunately, I only found out about it yesterday, right? So they're gone now. But let me play you this final message by the founder.
And I wish humanity was in a different place. I wish I could say, cheers, good luck, and know that the future is going to be bright for my children and I. But I know what kind of world this is. I've seen the COVID era. I've seen the censorship. I've seen the evil. I've seen the traitors. I've seen the agents. I've seen it all. And it's the final captain of the ship. I guess you could put it to Titanic. Everyone says it's.
So, the reason they went down is because of obviously it costs a lot of money to do this, and this is, as much as I love capitalism and the morality of capitalism, of a free market, the fact of the matter is, when you've got the tables tilted and you get it so centralized, the big platforms are going to outcompete the small platforms, just because of the power they've already accrued. And you're going to have to spend more and more money to keep this going. And when people don't support it, if they only supported the individual, the small channels, as much as they support the big platforms and the big corporations, then we can compete, and then the free market works. But this is just the direction that things are going. And of course, he has a very, obviously this is a final goodbye. So I'm not surprised that he has a very negative outlook on the future. This is a guy that's, if I play this, he talks about the DDoS attacks and how much of a nightmare it was just to keep the website going. This sounds a lot like Mark Passio when he talks about just dealing with technical problems all day. And this is, I acknowledge that this is very much part of the equation. You've got a creative person, you've got a person that should be focusing on being speaking to the people about what's going on right now, being very much in touch. But you can't also be the person that's at the tip of the spear, or the end of the jackhammer, getting hammered by the environmental pressures, which is, the state of software is getting worse. Software is getting more buggy. The way people program software, the mentality of them is, it's not getting any better, right? It's like we have a lot of replaceable parts, but the idea of a machine that's not going to break down in 10 years, we no longer make things that way. Everything is very temporary. But let me not get very abstract. The point is, yeah, there are a lot of problems with with our world, but more specifically being how to battle against it, being one of these people that are trying to make things better, like 153news.net, that had all these people that could get around the censorship, and you could see the kind of things that they could say on here. These URLs, the religion of pseudoscience. This was a flat Earth thing, okay? Not. I don't want to censor flat Earth people. Obviously, we should talk about these things. I actually think we should talk about flat Earth because the debate should be over by now, right? Either it's one way or it's the other way, right? So, yeah, there are a lot of things within this movement that haven't been put to scientific rigor, and they make us look bad. So, one thing that does stand up to scientific rigor is a claim like like this, that I'm not going to. Can I say? Yeah, I could say that. Israel assassinated JFK. That's a conspiracy. Jewish claims of 6 million dead Jews in Holocaust long before World War II even began. When I hear this stuff, I talk a lot about the Nazis, and I don't engage in any kind of this stuff that the denialism, right? But these kinds of things happen, and it's true. So like, why, instead of getting offended at people for pointing out, hey, look at this stuff, look at the numbers that they're saying that went through the camps and how they were systematically taken out, it doesn't add up, right? So why do you get mad at those claims? It doesn't mean that all of the stuff that happened didn't happen. It's like the way things are going, it just shuts down debate, it shuts down conversations. The people get very emotional, and this is the kind of thing, these kind of channels go away because people are just trending towards the big platforms. And yeah, this is what I wanted to get to. Chlorine in all the processed chicken, things like this that are basically on TikTok, and you're only find them on TikTok, which means people usually don't have those downloaded, which means they're very temporary. But here you had a central platform to actually talk about this. And the unfortunate thing is when you click on this, you can get to the actual screen grab, but you won't be able to play the video. And this is it. And these there were a lot of these sort of websites, maybe not like 153 News, but a lot of blogs, great websites, great research, and great interviews that you just don't find anymore. So it's all disappearing, right? And this is why people have a shorter and shorter view of history, and this is why I get frustrated watching, people who have a large following and what they're talking about and what kind of worldview they seem to imply. So the list of crimes and problems in the world is long, but so is the list of solutions. I think there are new solutions that weren't around before. I think new science, there's new science like the neuroplasticity, even the placebo effect, right? We have actually more power or we've always had this power, but there's actual information you could refer back to and learn it and go through it and see that you actually have the cards to change your own programming, your brain, your body. And this is bottom up. You can start working to be more productive, to not fall into the traps of being addicted to your diet or your technology. There is new science out there, and shadow work is another new solution. It's not new, obviously. I said a couple episodes ago, it goes back to Carl Jung, and it was pointed out that it goes way back before Carl Jung. Of course, the idea of exploring your mind and healing traumas and wounds and going into the unknown inside you, that's an ancient concept, of course. Well, sure, but people are more receptive to that than they've ever been. They really are. People are more receptive to looking at their behavior, changing the way things have always been. It's not just like, the old school family structure where you couldn't tell a guy that, hey, maybe you shouldn't drink so heavy, and hit your kids with a belt, but before that would have been just, that's the way we do things. And we no longer have that. We're quicker to question things and scrutinize things than ever before. Does that lead to things going in the wrong direction? It does. But still, there's an opportunity here. People are more open to talking about mental health and the emotions, right? So there's opportunity for growth there to go into all of these sub communities and try to plant seeds there, you know, even within your religion. You can actually get through to people because the things aren't as fundamentalist as they used to be. The grasp of the principles and worldview of religions, all of the religions, is not as strong as it used to be. You know, the cultural religions are having people, they have the same problem that we do, which is that people aren't sticking to the principles anymore. They're not referring back to the principles. They're not talking about morality. They're not talking about philosophy. There's an opportunity there to, grab those people that are still Jewish or still Christian, but they're thinking in a way that's going to, they're out to want to create a better world, regardless of what any religious dogma says, right? Another solution is art. It sounds funny, but I think there's a vacuum in the world, a vacuum of originality and creativity. I don't see people being creative anymore. I don't see people being original. Period. People are not original, and this is why we'll go we'll go close this guy down. Oh, you're not seeing him. I've been having him on the screen for a while, so we're gonna say goodbye to this gentleman. Best wishes to Bossman from 153 News, and this is a channel, or this is a blog that you would have never found, and the only reason I found it is because I was doing research last year about the octave relationship in music and kind of the metaphysics behind that, and I stumbled upon this because this is a classic blog, so I was able to find it through a Google search, and this is a website called El Loco Gringo. This is El Loco Gringo, and the guy had all these articles. This guy was a real genius, and I think there used to be more websites like this, and they're of course going away now. Somebody's keeping this maintained. You see, this is from 2010, and it's the last post was in 2010 or 2011. So for 15 years somebody has been keeping this up. One day they won't, and it'll go away. And if you don't have this archive, then it'll be lost to history. If you don't have a place to put this, it's going to be gone. And at that time in the future, it's going to be harder to even keep a website up and get it on one of those big platforms, because you're going to have so much other stuff. I talked last week about censorship through flooding, right? So anyway, this guy, he's saying, no, total bullshit. As has been my experience when addressing any topic in which I become curious, I find that people think backwards. They are confusing cause and effect. The note, as in musical note, is an interpretation of a perception or vector, itself heavily filtered of reality. This is because they are working under the assumption that the time domain is reality, and they have no concept of the frequency domain. Sounds very left-brained, he's got a very analytical mind, but he's also very original. This is why he's the El Loco. Okay, he's a crazy guy that has a lot of clearly intelligence, and he sees the world in a certain way. We're missing stuff like this. This blog, you never saw the guy's face. He never did an hour-long podcast or anything, but it has the kind of personality and originality that we're missing. This is one of his posts about hypostaticity. Hypostatize, to treat or regard a concept or idea as a distinct substance or reality. The insane society. People believing that voting Democrat or Republican makes a difference. People believing that the dollar is money. People believing that Wall Street promotes industry. People believing that we're fighting for freedom. That's like fucking for virginity, right? Big Al was still alive when I took physics in high school. He's talking about Albert Einstein, right? And the Euclidean universe and all this stuff that you already know, right? We've been through this, but this is, again, 2010. there was a very lively subculture of the internet where people were discussing these things. My friend told me about the first Free Your Mind conference that Mark was a part of, Mark Passio, and he organized, and he had all these people, and that there was such a high level of consciousness there, and it's gone. I was at the last in-person Mark Passio presentation, which was Two Masks, Same Face, and there were more people there. There were like 300 people, but I didn't, and I met a lot of great people there. I did, but I also generally saw that there was a lot of, I didn't feel that high level of consciousness, and I think if you did it again, you'd get the same thing, because people are just changing, and there's a lack of originality and creativity, but at the same time, there's a lack of staying committed to the 3D world. Like, there's not going to be a bifurcation. We're not going to win the war just because we're on the right spiritual side, just because we're moral people. We have to fight for this. We have to fight with skills, with ability. We have to know how to use the tools that everybody else is using. There is a way to use technology without being ruled by it. Being able to maintain relationships. It's getting harder and harder, but we can also get better and better and step up to this. So I see great failures on both the left and the right brain side of it. Look at this quote from Wilhelm Reich, right? Trust the inner voice that tells you what to do. You hold your life in your hands. Don't entrust it to anyone else, least of all to your chosen leaders. Be yourself. Any number of great men have told you that. And then he has links to all these things, good links. But here's what you'll find, right? This is from Information Liberation. A lot of these don't exist anymore, right? Oh, it took me to the homepage. Now, let's see what's on the homepage of this website that's still up. Of course, Trump and Venezuela. Okay. How I broke 300 million views on X in 2025. Oh, interesting. Tikva Fund. Okay, that pushes for censorship to advance Zionism. So again, grants from the Trump administration. You're going to see... Okay, so I see that Israel is a big topic here. And you're going to see what I was expecting to find, what I wanted to show you, is that all of this is about the current political day-to-day occurrences, right? Netanyahu, Trump, new anchor for CBS Evening News, which is, of course, Larry Ellison's handpicked, yes, Zionist fanatic. Okay, Netanyahu again. So you see, that's... you see, this website has become very much heavily focused on Israel and Israel's role, which isn't a bad thing to focus on. It is true about, the funding in the United States government and what's going on in the, in Palestine, in the war, so-called war. Sure, but this is what happens to people. It's kind of centralized. He was linking, a local gringo was linking to an article about hypostasis. And where is it? That means that they were posting about a variety of things, and they were talking about science and psychology and the mind. And now it seems like it's all about Israel. So yeah, you see how everything is becoming more condensed and separate and separated yet centralized. Let's click this next link. Okay, so this one's still up from the same website, Information Liberation. But you see, this is from 2007, the article. The plight of the individual in modern society. I saw this. I thought it was very good. They're quoting Carl Jung. Oh, yeah. Let's read some of it. No, let's read all of it. The bigger the crowd, the more negligible the individual becomes. That's exactly what I was saying. But if the individual, overwhelmed by the sense of his own puniness and impotence, should feel that his life has lost all its meaning, which after all is not identical with public welfare and higher standards of living, then he is already on the road to state slavery, and without knowing or wanting it has become its proselyte. The man who looks only outside and quails before the big battalions has no resource with which to combat the evidence, of his sense and his reason. But that is just what is happening today. We are all fascinated and overawed by statistical truths and large numbers and are daily apprised of the nullity and futility of the individual personality, since it is not represented and personified by an mass organization. Conversely, these personages who strut about on the world stage and whose voices are heard far and wide seen to the uncritical public to be borne along on some mass movement or on the tide of public opinion, and for this reason are either applauded or execrated. Since mass suggestion plays the predominant role here, it remains a moot point whether this message is their own, for which they are personally responsible, or whether they merely function as a megaphone for collective opinion. I think that's what AI is. I think it's a megaphone for public opinion. I think it's just a standardized, electronized mimicry of the lowest common denominator of society. So, I don't think it's very amazing. I was supposed to do it this week. I didn't do it because I completely changed the show. I wanted to play some AI videos of the animal videos of the cute animals and just show how easy it is to tell when something is AI. Sometimes it's harder, but generally there's, artificial intelligence will not be able to recreate nuance and like little differences in lighting. You're going to have a very static background. It's going to look too perfect. It's going to have things that don't make sense. There's not going to be tonal changes in people's voice. Things that it should be very easy. It should be like this for us to tell it apart. But there's a vacuum for originality. So if the last 20 videos you've seen have no originality and they're just a megaphone for collective opinion, like they mentioned in this article, then the AI can do a rebroadcast of collective opinion, and it's going to seem the same. So you're going to seem like AI is mimicking reality. No. There's such a low level of publishing and production. There's such a low level of originality that you can actually have a computer copy it, Under these circumstances, it is small wonder that individual judgment grows increasingly uncertain of itself, and that responsibility is collectivized as much as possible, i.e. is shuffled off by the individual and delegated to a corporate body. In this way, the individual becomes more and more a function of society, which in turn usurps the function of the real-life carrier. Whereas in actual fact, society is nothing more than an abstract idea like the state. Both are hypostatized, that is, have become autonomous. Hypostatized means, as we can see from the context it's used here, that it's a thing that doesn't exist, but it is made real because of the people's belief in it and their investment in it. The state in particular is turned into a quasi-animate personality from whom everything is expected. And I'll interject my own words, like a parent. The people have turned government into their parent. And people need to talk about psychology more. That's what I think is missing. We're never going to overthrow this thing talking about the economic system or the technology that's coming, even the technocracy. It's not enough. It's about the mind. The change has to be in the mind. Who is talking about the mind anymore? In reality, it is only a camouflage for those individuals who know how to manipulate it. Thus, the constitutional state drifts into the situation of a primitive form of society, namely the communism of a primitive tribe where everybody is subject to the autocratic rule of a chief or an oligarchy. Yeah, Did we even... Yeah, we read this. What's the last link he had? The Century of the Self. Okay, so this is great links again. This website's doing a good job. The Century of the Self. They're talking about individuality, right? And individuality, which of course I stand up for. I'm a champion of individuality. But they've done it in a way where, just kind of to summarize that article, which I did look through, and I know the point that they're making, is that you make people think that they're making their own choices, right? So everybody's becoming detached, and it's all about individual freedom. But when you have this invisible tilting the table of things in the collective, where they broadcast a collective voice, and you're going to get packed in, into essentially what the state couldn't do with the strong arm, what they couldn't do with the fist of communism, they've done by giving you infinite options and giving you a thousand options at the grocery store. And you get lost, like where you have if you have a thousand options, you almost have no options. If you had two, it would almost be better, right? Because the things that are made available to you are still at lowest common denominator. They don't lead towards your advancement, and when you separate people so much and confuse their language, they cannot communicate anymore. So this is the century of the self. It was supposed to be a century of freedom, but just like with the internet and flooding people with information, they've turned it into no one can find the door. You know, it's as effective as handcuffs. If you're in a room with so many doors, you're never going to find the one that leads to the outside. So let's read through some more of A Loco Gringo, because I could get lost in this all day, and I'm glad I remembered it. I can't believe I was gonna actually do a show where I was talking about the pseudo spiritual bullshit that people say, when I can just show you something that will be lost to history one day, but has all these unique thoughts. So the ANN is the allocated neural network. It's this guy's framework of understanding, model of the human brain, right? Of the basically treating both the sides of the brain, the left brain and the right brain, as a mind in itself. So it's a network of two minds, and then they're mediated. But let me actually read from this so you can see what he's talking about. Man has a unique brain. We have two cognitive minds, independent yet interconnected and synchronous in nature. The left uses top-down thinking in a binary network, i.e. true or false. This is the Aristotelian view of the world we are all familiar with. This is what distinguishes us from animals. It interprets the input of the right mind into terms that could be quantified and made more useful, like sound, time, and color. It is the individuation. It is dominant. It operates in the time domain. This is the rational mind, right? The right mind uses bottom-up thinking in a weighted Boolean network. Possible results can be true, false, both, or neither, modulated by aggregate or accumulate input. This is the way an animal thinks. There's only now. This is the connectedness. This is the source of insight, creativity, thinking outside the box. It is subdominant. It operates in the frequency domain. Monitoring and regulating the synchronicity is the ANN, the allocated neural network. Wetware, which is a word he uses basically for software, dedicated to comparing the results of the calculations performed by the left and right minds by flagging discrepancies by setting trigger points on the algorithms. A decision tree on each mind. This algorithm is what a psychologist would call a personality. Thus, we have three ways of dealing with the world. Dominant, left mind skeptical. Subdominant, right mind receptive. And combined, we'll see. That is the we'll see mind, right? This is no more complicated than putting on your doctor hat when you go to work, your wife husband hat when at home, and your we'll see hat in public. So you see, sometimes people talk like this, they're talking in a very hyper-scientific way, and I think often people can talk like this and sound very profound, but they're actually saying nothing. This guy's not saying nothing. And you see, again, this is from 2010, where on one hand it was more easy, it was more common to find that type of research to get to this point how he sees the brain, but at the same time you didn't have as much information out there to reach this in a short amount of time. So what I'm basically trying to say is I think this guy was a genius. This guy was an absolute genius, and I have to read through all of his stuff, and you can really get lost in it. This is an article called Essence, The Essence of Me, where he basically talks about the two sides of him, right? I've had several requests for a picture. Well, here it is. A local gringo is on the right, Walt on the left. The whole thing is Walter, right? This is Then this is the Walter side. What is this thing that a local gringo so fiercely defends? It is a tiny vortex that is formed in a temporal river. It exists for the briefest of moments, then is reabsorbed. It strives to balance the forces of ripples within and the ripples without, maintaining an ethereal form that allows connectedness with the universe and the individual me. It defends me from those who seek to remove this individuation and connectedness, sometimes doldrums, sometimes rapids. Under the tree limbs and around the rocks. The river has no purpose, it just flows from high ground to low, and no whence or whither, only anon. It obeys the law of the universe, neg entropy times arrow, and in the end the vortex loses form. The moving finger writes, and having writ moves on. I guess that was a quote from Omar Khayyam. Throughout it all, a local gringo never lost a wonder. It is the essence of me. In the end, there's only the river. All is as it should be. By Walter. So he's talking about himself from the perspective of the left brain, but he's talking about the right brain. So you see, it's very artistic, right? The artistic form of his personality that's connected to nature. And I talk about the twin pillars, and this is what it is, right? This is a guy that has really done it in a unique way, without using like old Kabbalistic iconography, right? Symbology, which I have to think about that, right? Because I sometimes use these symbols to talk about the way I view the world, and I see that if you listen to me, you may confuse me for being somebody who subscribes to some kind of like old systems of philosophy, where my philosophy it's like a whole new thing. Not to say like, oh my god, I'm a genius or something, but like this guy, I have a unique way of seeing the world, and I know it needs to be put out there because there's somebody like this that's going to read it, and they're going to find the language that they don't yet have for something they already resonate with. And this is how the universe will be made better step by step for me, is you need to put out the people that put out the information that people are going to resonate with, that is missing there. They don't have the access to form those neural connections and like neurons that fire together, wire together, sort of a thing. And step by step, we can rebuild this world to restore it to its original beauty as well, and also take it further, because I don't just believe in letting nature go as it is fully, and that's not its full potential. The universe has a potential that, you know, humanity doesn't just destroy. Humanity doesn't just fuck the universe up. It doesn't just fuck up nature and use it for its own personal benefit. Its personal benefit and the selfishness of man is the tip of the spear of nature to broaden its horizons and to shoot for the stars so the domain can expand. All right, the Big Bang doesn't exist out there in the universe. The Big Bang is internal. Things like that, these kinds of thoughts that need to be out there, and that they're not airy-fairy thoughts. They're very 3D. They're very 3D world. The 3D moral of the story I'm trying to tell people is like, start your own blog, man. And before you even start your own blog, like, investigate and explore your own mind to find the originality within you. Because there are a lot of people that will start a blog today and they won't say shit. You might as well let AI start your blog for you if you don't have unique thoughts. Or it may not even be unique thoughts in that kind of way as I'm saying it. It may be even a unique aesthetic. You may just, analyze movies or something, or not even analyze it, just experience them, but experience it in a way that people resonate with, and you're actually going to create value there. You're going to create connections. You're going to create more appreciation for the principles of nature and the value of human life, and not just human life, the value of life, period, right? So, yeah. That is the rant that I was trying to unlock by doing this kind of a free-flowing episode. Then we've got words from a local gringo talking about his rational mind, his left brain, right? This is my mind and mine alone. I like it just as it is. It has guided and protected me through a turbulent life. It has shown me the beauty and the ugliness of the world in all of its glory and depravity. I have marveled at the richness of the world and the people in it. It has given me a most rewarding journey. It is a fine mind indeed, and I am proud of it, so very proud it has served me well. And then the final, the third part of it, or the mediator. I have been blessed slash cursed with the gift slash burden of the we inside of me. This captures very well my overall foundation of my worldview. Is that, yeah, there's a fundamental unity to the universe, but I don't like to take it all the way down to the unity. I like to leave it at the duality. I think the duality is just fine. I'm not a dualist in the classic sense. I'm not a separationist. I am all about the interconnection, and there is no closer interconnection than two separates coming together to become one. So in a way, it's unity anyway, unity consciousness anyway. So that's El Loco Gringo, and he's got a lot of posts, and he's got a lot of links, shining beacons of sanity. Yeah, this is great. This is another thing that you could still find in these old websites, even those that are taken down, because you can look up the links, you can look up the titles. I'm building my own little archive of profound information that it's not going to be lost to time. And one of these links, these resources, is this psyche.com/consciousness. He calls it the esoterica. This is called, here, esoteric subjects on the web, right? So you got a lot of stuff, 250,000 plus links. And a lot of stuff here is lost to time as well. Like, let me just click on a random one. I'd say there's a good chance. Yeah, guess what? It's gone, right? But you still have this. You still have streamofconsciousness.org/link. So I'm going to do this in real time to show you, how to look through the archive to find things that are important. Hopefully it was archived, right? Because it could be no results. So this is the other issue, right? You got to actually archive things and put them in this database to then access it later. But a lot of these do work, and they're amazing. And there's another website like this that has a lot more. It has a lot more woo-woo things. It was like BibleApocalyptades.net or something like that. But this is one of the things I found on here. Placebo effect revealed in calm brain cells. This is what I'm talking about with new science. And this is not that new. It's 2004, right? This is that single neurons actually demonstrate the placebo effect. So without human bias, the bias of the human mind, right? Or that's already an assumption, right? The assumption that you can view a neural network detached from the mind. But here's the point. Detailed scans of brain cells in Parkinson's disease patients have revealed the action of the placebo effect at an unprecedented scale. The research provides further evidence for a physiological underpinning for the placebo effect. I've made the claim that there's a physiological underpinning for free will. I don't think free will is a human quality, not even beside the claim that many make that free will basically doesn't exist. But again, I don't have a one or the other view. I do view there's such an, it's not detached from the free will aspect is not detached from a determinism of the universe. It's all about an interconnection with the medium of everything, and everything is connected. And this is why it goes back to the two forces, the two fundamental forces that we see reflected in the two halves of the mind, of the brain. But basically, they talk about this abnormal firing where people who have Parkinson's, they have a lack of dopamine, right? So they gave them drugs which mimic dopamine, such as L-Dopa and apomorphine. So they gave this, how did they actually do it? Yeah, they gave patients 3 doses of apomorphine, and then they gave them a placebo. And then they saw that when they got the placebo effect, they got a salt pill. They actually got the same effect as if they got the actual medicine, right? So then they're like, how is this possible? Well, there are two possible explanations according to them. The first is the cognitive hypothesis, where the physiological effects are triggered by the patient's expectation of benefits. And I kind of talk about this, or I tried to talk about this with substitutions and proxies, right? The matrix, the system provides us proxies and substitutions of things that we need to function, and this is how they get us addicted to those things. They get us set to put the false reality in front of our eyes, but it's not something crazy or like magical like the Matrix. It's just 3D boots on the ground reprogramming through neurostimulation, and you could change that. You have those cards as well, not only them, not only the people doing that to you. So you can condition yourself. The second is the classic conditioning response. Now they talk about it. This is the Pavlovian response, where the context around the therapy could induce such a response, because before, when you kind of got this pill, you had a certain effect, so now that expected effect will happen even though the original spark that generated it is not there. This is the sentence that goes, neurons that fire together wire together, which is like where you take steps and you start working a path into the dirt, right? And this is how roads are created in the dirt, because that path was taken before. So then whatever, I'm not gonna, I think I spent too much time on analogies. So like I'm hoping you already know what I'm saying, and I waste time trying to find the words to make that analogy. So anyway, I think this is amazing. I don't think a lot of people get this or think about it. Again, 3D world, this is very real. I think all of these, I think the principles of the universe, natural law, you can actually prove it in the scientific domain. You can. This is not something that's airy-fairy. This is not something that's hyper-spiritual. It is spiritual, but it's also in the scientific realm. It's actually observable and repeatable. No belief is required. This is another link here. I don't even know how I found this, but through the links on a local gringo's site, and this is amazing. This is about global power networks. This is a guy that's talking about the state and government and global government in let's see, I want to actually, in like geometric terms, and basically in the terms of physics. Yeah, talking about self-organizing barriers, right? And so what I guess you could say this is a scientific analysis. So he's not talking about politics. He's just talking about fixed equilibrium and power law distributions of static barriers, right? Not that I like that so much, but some people are inclined that way. And your computer geniuses, you can give this to them, and maybe they'll understand that government is slavery, right? You got the quote from George Washington: "Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master." I think it is useful to be able to talk to certain people in their own language, right? To talk to the scientist types, the computer science types, with these words that they understand, like applied systems, right? Very real 3D world. Skills and tools that you can use to actually make a difference. Not just talking into the air about what should be or what's going to happen. So I'm going to end this show, hopefully keep it to under an hour. And this is from a local gringo article called Shadows. Consider Plato's cave, in which he discusses a man chained to the wall in the cave. I'm not going to read this whole thing. So he's talking about, this is more about the two sides of the mind, and it's also about the world of appearances, which is shadows. You see this cube, which is the rotating cube, which is the thing that actually is, and then you get the shadows. This is the whole Plato's cave allegory, which I don't want to rehash. But I will say this: the hypostatized belief that the shadow is reality. This is what we have, right? That the things we see in the news, that the political goings on are the actual decisions that are being made, that actual play is the actual essence of what is going on, that is the actual nature of the universe. But this is differential calculus is top-down thinking applied to Euclidean geometry. Integral calculus is bottom-up thinking applied to Euclidean geometry. The big hoochie coochie is not Euclidean in nature. It ain't gonna work. The big hoochie coochie is basically the mystery of the universe, right? Is the big universe. Consider the following logic tree. The point is the shadow of the line. 2. The line is the shadow of the square. 3. The square is the shadow of the cube. 4. The cube is the shadow of the vector. And 5. The vector is the shadow of the big hoochie coochie, which is the magical big universe. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are totally inside the skull. Right? He's talking about the 3 dimensions, the 4 dimensions, the way we see things, and that they're actually they're manifestations, they're shadow of the real universe that is or not the real universe, but the causal universe that is causing the causal, right? Or that is causing the universe of effects, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are totally inside the skull. They are only the mind's way of making sense of 5. The brain fart occurs at the juncture of the cube and the vector in step 4, i.e. the cube is a subset of the vector, which in itself is a filtered perception of the big hoochie coochie. Step 6. Why can no one smell the brain fart? It stinks like hell. Is everyone really that stupid? This is really simple shit, folks. What is wrong? Why is this so difficult to understand? What is wrong with everyone's minds? Why does this seem so complicated? You've got to work the logic both ways. You've got to ask the right question if you expect a reasonable answer. Put your rubber ruler back in your desk and start using that marvelous cognitive device you've got in your skulls for something besides keeping your ears apart. Refuse to be idiots. Pull your head out of your ass and look around. It ain't real. You're dancing with shadows. Yeah, I'm thinking about what to... This is really better. I think this blog is better to be read. I'm hearing that if you're listening to me or if you're listening to me in a different language and reading the subtitles, like you're not getting this. You need to investigate this stuff on your own. And this is the kind of stuff I remember like 10 years ago that I was, when I was going into studying the real universe, right? The real causal realm, not just the realm of effects. Going past the politics and all the stuff that I'm disillusioned with, and going to things I never thought about before, the connections that I haven't seen before, like the phi ratio in nature and things like, the sacred geometry and the connections between different cultures and how in spiritual traditions and the holy books they've got similar aspects, and how come these things that are occurring all over the world, they somehow have these connections between them, and there are all these mysterious things and mysteries that you can investigate for hours. These are the kind of things that I was into years and years ago, and I remember that's the happiest, or the most optimistic I've ever been in life was at that time. And I realized that for me, this is what makes me happy. I need to be in this study of the universe and finding new ways, finding new doors in it, because there are. It keeps growing, right? This isn't a finite thing. And over 161 episodes, there have been a lot of weeks where I don't really feel like doing this show, and it's just because it gets repetitive and it gets to go too far into the realm of effects, into talking about the shadows, where this show has always been about, okay, we're going to look at the shadows because everybody else is looking at the shadow, everybody else is looking at the screen. I'm going to look at the screen with you and then say, hey, but look at this, and then turn from the screen and turn towards each other, and then to say, hey, look, there's a movie going on everywhere, not just there, and there's something behind the curtain, and that is important. Yeah, but it's way better when you read this stuff and investigate it yourself and think about it, and not just hear me do it my own way. I guess my role is to put my unique take on it in my voice, and to hit a rant every now and then that makes sense. Coming to TikTok soon. Anyway, that's it for this week in Tyranny, and he linked to I love the little the gifs of the cartoon, the Wile E. Coyote, and yeah, I don't know exactly which one. I think it's Wile E. Coyote. What show is this guy from? The guy with the two big pistols? I don't know. But anyway, this one's called Two Silhouettes. And all the best, and see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.
The guy whose silhouettes on the shade I can hide. The tears in my eyes. Lost control and rang your bell. I was so let me in or else I'll beat down your door. When two strangers who had been two silhouettes on the shade said to my shop, you're on the wrong block. Rushed down to your house with wings on my feet. Looked you like I
Are we gonna get
never
banned? Are we gonna get copyrighted? Hopefully not, right? Two silhouettes on the shade. Yes, that's what the universe is. So, here's to the real world, right? Bye now.